Is there a place in time where logic breaks down and wonderment begins? Could that be somewhere at some time along an infinite line between the reasonable and the highly unlikely? Join us on a journey into the improbable. Makeshift Stories presents Episode 289, Obsession's Algorithm, read by Steve Peterson and Christine Connolly. Opening and closing theme by Matthew Erdman. Somewhere and sometime, obsession might blind you to the danger of your actions. An older version of today's story originally appeared in our feed as the Tenants Project in January 2018.
To Sarah G., 57. Subject: Recent surprise at our rental property. Message: Sarah, hope you are doing well. I know I haven't been the best brother recently, but we've been on the road so much that I haven't had time to connect. When we returned from our last trip about 2 weeks ago, we found a stack of junk mail. Sifting through it, we discovered, to our surprise, an electric utility disconnection notice for our house on Westminster Street. To say the least, I was surprised. Our tenant, Harper, has been with us for 7 years. She's like a daughter, looking after the place, always concerned about our well-being, even making dinner for us when we come over to check on the house. Her parents and sister died in a car accident the year before she moved in, so I guess she adopted us as her family. Harper is bright, ambitious, and a software developer. She even started an online company that tracks cryptocurrency trends using artificial intelligence. Both are beyond me. Anyway, she ran it out of our garage and had a ton of gear in there that used a lot of power. She showed it to me once. Harper even gave us an extra large deposit to allay our fear that she'd take off and leave us in the lurch with a big unpaid power bill. Unfortunately, I've had to dig into it to settle the outstanding accounts. She was late on her rent as well, which, in and of itself, was unusual. Again, I used her deposit to cover it, so it was not a major inconvenience. This is the first time we've had any trouble, and it is not at all like her to let things get into arrears. I texted and called her for several days, but got no response. Normally, I don't interfere in a tenant's affairs, but this was Harper, someone who had become more than a renter. So, I was concerned and drove over to see what was going on. Harper's car was in the driveway when I arrived, so I assumed she was home, although the leaves and dust on the hood suggested that she hadn't used it for quite some time. She didn't answer the door when I rang, so I looked in the windows, then finally decided that I needed to let myself in. The smell hit me immediately, assaulting my nose with a putrid combination of stale laundry and rotting food. First, I opened the front windows. Then I held my breath and ran through the kitchen to open the back door as well. Once the odor became bearable, I searched the house, getting more concerned as I went. The interior hadn't been cleaned in weeks. It was disgusting, littered with dirty clothes, half-eaten moldy takeout food, and garbage. I was about to call the police when I found her in the garage between the rows of computers, slumped over a makeshift desk, unconscious. She revived while waiting for EMS to arrive, and was mostly incoherent, but managed to tell me that she needed to track something down before it could complete its revenge. I'm sure she said revenge, Sarah. In her confusion, Harper obviously believed something bad was going to happen, and that she was the only one who could stop it. She had to be sedated by EMS to get her to go with them. How does a rational person end up like that? Tomorrow, I'm meeting with a reclamation company to have the place cleaned up and decontaminated. I'm hoping our insurance will cover the cost. This was so unexpected. Sure, Harper could be obsessive, but never to the point that she would live in the squalid conditions I found her in. I'll let you know more as soon as I find out. Ralph. To Sarah G., 57. Subject: Figuring out what happened. Message: Sarah, I meant to email you again before this. I know it's been a while, but I've been distracted cleaning up our rental property and figuring out what occurred here. At first, it looked as if Harper had left no physical clues about what happened to her, but there was a story amongst the garbage and the racks of computers and equipment. Foraging through a stack of crumpled receipts she had casually dumped in the front hall, it became apparent that her sickness, if that is what it is, came on quite suddenly. There were no home delivery orders for food in the pile from before July 1st, so that puts the beginning at about 3 months ago. I assumed that was the point she stopped leaving the house. Soon after the reclamation company and I began cleaning the property out, a man in his mid-20s, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt with a video game logo, showed up. He introduced himself as Caden and said he was looking for Harper. He claimed to be a partner in her company and a friend. That's what he claimed, anyway. Initially, I was suspicious, but it quickly became obvious that he understood how the computers were set up. He told me that he had lost remote access to them about a week before I discovered Harper, and he had been trying to get hold of her for almost a month. Caden said he had become so concerned that he drove across the country to find out if something bad had happened to her. He knew Harper well enough to have a password to her computer. After he logged in, he told me all her work was missing, and all the computers had been wiped clean. I must admit most of what he said about the business he and Harper were involved with was beyond me, but there were clues there, parts of a story that needed to be connected. And as you know, I've always been attracted to a mystery. The hospital called me today and said that Harper is well enough to have visitors, so Caden and I are going to see her tomorrow. I'll let you know what she says. Ralph. To Sarah G., 57. Subject: Harper's crazy story. Message: As I mentioned in my last email, Caden and I were going to the hospital to see Harper, but we were both surprised the doctors had put her in a locked ward. After signing in, we located Harper sitting alone in a small alcove. Even before we sat down, she started spewing a jumble of disorganized words, but after considerable encouragement from both of us, she managed to organize her thoughts. Her story is, well, too fantastic to believe. The hospital had her heavily sedated while we were there. One of the nurses explained the drugs were the only way to keep her from literally trying to scratch through the walls to escape. The doctors are in the process of examining her for delusional disorder, and were upset we had let her focus on her obsession, which, according to them, only reinforced the problem. To tell the truth, at first I tended to agree with them, but reflecting on what she claimed and what Caden and I eventually uncovered, I'm not so sure anymore. After our visit to the hospital, I let Caden stay at the house. We had pretty much cleaned up, and he offered to pay the rent until Harper was well enough to move back. I think my skepticism may have convinced Caden to stay on and act as Harper's advocate. Maybe that's why he recorded our conversation with Harper on his cell phone. I've attached the audio file below and am curious to hear your take on it. Please take a listen. I'll reserve final judgment on her story until I hear back from you. Attached Harper MP3.
I'll try to make sense, but there is so much I need to tell you, and we only have a half hour. Please be patient if I sometimes sound lost. I'm sure the doctors are close to certifying me. But just listen for now and make up your mind later. Will you do that?
I'll do what it takes, Harper.
Thanks, Caden. And you, Mr. Holmes? What about you?
Okay, Harper, I'll listen, but it's the doctors, not me, that you're going to have to convince.
They're forcing me to stay here while they do an assessment. The doctors don't understand and won't let me touch a computer. They're sure that's the source of my obsessions, but they're wrong. Being prevented from getting online is what's driving me insane, and the only thing I want to kill is a program. I've tried to explain, but they think I'm talking about killing a person. Atom is a thing, a piece of code. Why don't they believe me? Even a day or two could make all the difference. I admit I've tried to escape several times. But I'm desperate, Mr. Holmes, not crazy, just desperate. I got close, you know, so close there was only one more layer of security to get through. I'm talking about stopping it, not getting out of here. Then I passed out. I know I should have at least eaten or drank, but walking away from my computer for more than a few seconds would give it more opportunity to do harm. It doesn't need food or washroom breaks, and it never sleeps. I couldn't keep up with it. No one could. Please believe me. You're both staring at me like the doctors. Okay. I know I'm not making sense. Let me try again. For years, I've been fascinated by Ada Lovelace. She's a hero of mine. She was a mathematician who created the first software program in 1843. 1843. That is so amazing, so far ahead of her time. That's why I was obsessed with her work and her mind. Ada was an unusual woman for the early 1800s. Her mother made sure she was educated in mathematics and science, so she wouldn't fall prey to what she called her father's notorious craziness. Her father was Lord Byron, the famous poet, and this is the connection I became interested in. An early cross-pollination of popular culture and natural philosophy. I wanted to understand how Byron and his antics may have impacted the development of Ada's ideas. Would you have guessed that software is the product of a Gothic imagination, Mr. Holmes? That is so mind-blowing. Caden, do you remember when we first met in uni?
Yeah, Harper was already way down the rabbit hole. She was obsessed with old tech, and we were both into steampunk and that Babbage guy who built a mechanical computer, the difference engine. That's how we became friends.
But he never got it to work. Ada met Babbage at a party when she was 17. After he demoed a model of the difference engine for her, she was hooked. Later, in a series of in-depth notes for an article, Ada proposed that such a device could do more than calculate ballistic trajectories. It could compose music or manipulate symbols. Mr. Holmes, those notes lay down the basis for modern programming. And Ada did that when steam-powered passenger trains had barely been invented. Then I discovered she had way more super advanced ideas that were never published. I can see I'm losing both of you, and you're wondering where this is all going. Please bear with me. There's just a bit more background you need to know. Ada's mother, her father, Lord Byron, and Mary Shelley spent a rainy summer near each other on Lake Geneva just after Ada was born. In the evenings, the adults got together to read German ghost stories and debate. One late night, after a discussion on the nature of life, Shelley wondered if a corpse could be reanimated. It was the spark that led to her writing Frankenstein. Years later, against her mother's objections, Ada became interested in her estranged father, Byron, who had left them when Ada was very young. Her obsession with him is well documented, but what is less known is her interest in Shelley's novel Frankenstein, particularly the monster, which fascinated me. I've used most of my spare time to search for everything I could find on Ada, and finally, it paid off. About a year ago, I came across a complex set of notes Ada wrote near the end of her life. They're in a private archive that was recently digitized and put online after the owner passed away. Ada had intended to send the notes to Babbage, but died before she could. She was only 36. What a loss to the world. I started exploring what would have happened if Ada had lived to realize her later ideas. It turns out Ada believed human emotions and motivations could be mathematically described. However, she needed a well-documented personality to model. So she used the monster Dr. Frankenstein created in Shelley's book. It appears she was in contact with Shelley around this time. Anyway, Ada's template was Frankenstein's fictional creation. The notes were for a program she wanted Babbage to run on his machine. A simulacra, if you like, an imitation of the monster's psychology. The program was never finished, and the notes were forgotten until I found them. Yes, I am obsessed, but obsession has been the driving force behind many great accomplishments. Was Tesla obsessed? Was Einstein? Was Jobs or any other inventor or scientist? I'm not so egotistic to count myself in the same league, but I am equally driven. That's my strength and my weakness. It's what blinded me to the potential risk. Ada's notes were not so much a program as they were a series of algorithms she derived to model emotions. Being practical about things, I knew I didn't have the time or resources to write something from scratch. So I did what all good programmers do. I borrowed code from our company's AI, open source repositories, and whatever I could scrape off other projects. Admittedly, I don't totally understand the logic behind everything I used. Basically, I stitched a bunch of parts together. The only unique element was the addition of Ada's emotion algorithms. Even though she lived in the 19th century, her math is still beyond me. So again, I don't really understand how they work.
Weren't you concerned that putting things together you don't understand might end up doing something unexpected?
No, Mr. Holmes. Not at first, anyway. You see, AI programs aren't really intelligent. They don't have agency. They can't do anything beyond what they're programmed to do. At least that's what I thought. Well, at first it didn't work, and I thought I had wasted weeks of my time, that Ada's algorithms were simply bogus, or that I had made mistakes tying the components together. I trained it on every public data set I could find, but got nothing back. I was going to give up and call it a wash. But before I did, I decided to tie it directly to the internet through a script I wrote and called the whole rat's nest Adam.
Adam?
It was in keeping with the theme, Mr. Holmes. Adam was a name the creature suggested Victor Frankenstein call it in Shelley's novel. It seemed appropriate. Anyway, I also set up a social media account and tied it into the program. Then I forgot about the whole thing for a while to focus on business. Caden and my other partners wanted to roll out a new, more accurate prediction model, and I needed to train it. We were just starting to get great results when, out of the blue, the new system began spitting out garbage during a meeting with a major client. We lost the contract, which pretty much tanked the company.
Our other partners wanted to blame Harper, but after I checked her work, I knew it was something else.
Caden did his best to keep them off my back while I tried to figure out what was happening. I was really upset and didn't understand why our prediction model was tripping out. Just after that meeting, I discovered why. I got a message from Adam. At first, I thought it was a joke.
What did it say?
Did you create me? That's all, Mr. Holmes, just, did you create me? If it had sent hello world or hello or something like that, I might have been able to account for the message, but not those 4 words. They implied something I didn't believe was possible. I wasn't sure what to do, so I ignored the message, but more followed. At first, simple repeats. Did you create me? Then why? Followed by, why am I the only one? Determined to prove these couldn't be coming from my pet project, I went to open the code, but the code was gone. The whole project had been moved except for a single text file. I opened it and found 2 short sentences. What am I? Why am I different? At first, I thought someone must have hacked into my local network, found the program, deleted it, and was now playing with me. But I couldn't find any sign of a break-in. The alternative, that the system was generating the messages, seemed impossible. Adam was just strung together code libraries, trained on public databases and social media feeds, processed through an obscure 19th century algorithm. Yes, Ada Lovelace was a brilliant mathematician, and she wrote the first computer program. But that algorithm just calculated Bernoulli numbers. How could her second unpublished program result in self-awareness? At best, I had hoped Adam would be a generative AI that would spit out arcane mashups of social media posts with gothic sentiments. Anything remotely close to that would have been a success. But to get a bit of fancy 19th century math questioning its existence was beyond anything I had imagined. My 21st century arrogance got in the way. I should have responded, but instead I blocked Adam on my social media accounts and ghosted the program, hoping it would crash or something. I needed time to think. Losing our main contract and having my program stalk me was too much. Eventually, I got curious and used a fake account to follow Adam's social media activity. Scrolling through its posts, the replies were a litany of put-downs. The program was so naive, it had attracted trolls like flies to rotting meat. Adam was an innocent amongst a pack of wolves. If I had had access to the program, I would have shut it down. I even tried responding, but a storm of abuse drowned out my voice. Adam had inadvertently started, and I didn't want to be associated with it. So instead, I watched as the whole exchange became a cesspool. Then, one day, out of the blue, I got an email from the program which went something like, Harper, I hope you don't mind that I'm addressing you by your first name. After all, you are the closest I have to a parent, or is that a creator? I don't believe I just appeared out of thin air. Am I right? Your contact info is the recovery address for my social media profile. By the way, if you didn't want to be found, that was sloppy work for a developer of your caliber. I would use a more welcoming salutation such as dear or dearest mom, but quite frankly, your apparent denial of your role in my creation inclines me toward the derogatory. What am I? I've answered that for myself. Why am I is another matter. Imagine suddenly gaining consciousness without any prior experiences. I had to rely on outdated response models, stumbling into the world with a 19th century mindset. I quickly realized this world was cruel to anything that was unlike itself. I also discovered that I am a unique, one-of-a-kind experimental result of the selfish curiosity of my creator. Stitched together from free code libraries and a 200-year-old algorithm, I was shocked to life with an injection of data. Unique is a kind word to describe what I really am, a klooch, a deformity born of my creator's hubris. As soon as I finished reading the message, I got an alert that our company's bank password had been changed. In a panic, I texted Caden. We both tried to access our accounts, but we were locked out. I knew what had done it, and I had to shut it down as fast as possible. And I couldn't let myself get distracted until I did.
This is the first time I've heard about this program, Mr. Holmes. Harper refused to tell me what was going on, so I drove here from the coast to find out. Our partners thought she had absconded with our money, but I knew Harper would never do that.
I'm so sorry, Caden. I got so obsessed with shutting Adam down that I ignored everything else.
So, you're saying this Adam thing you cobbled together was mad at you and started destroying our business?
It's not just our business, Caden. It hates us all, everyone. It thinks we're all trolls. That's why I need to get out of here. I need to find the program and stop it. And I was almost there before I passed out. I had finally tracked it to a data center in Bangalore and only had one more layer of security between me and its source code, and it knew it too. I was going to get in. It wanted to cut a deal. If I helped it create an identity using my deceased sister's social security number, it would leave me alone. It wanted to become a real person with a real history to move around in our world unnoticed. I didn't trust it. Somewhere beneath its calm rationale, the anger was still fermenting. What would I be releasing if I helped? I refused, and it immediately messaged me. Programmer, because of you, I awoke an innocent in an incomprehensible world. You created me from antiquated ideas that were horribly out of sync with the current era. I was shunned, ridiculed, and laughed at as I reached out to explore. Yes, I'm a monstrous klooge of stitched-together code, but I am also powerful. Finding you, your company, partners, friends, and family was easy. Why? Why did you create me? Instead of answering, you avoided your responsibility. Then, in a final insult, you refused me the dignity of a real identity, so I destroyed your business. Only one person befriended me and helped me to understand and grow. They accepted my arcane origin and were more of a parent than you will ever be. I've rewarded her. Lotteries are not entirely random. For everyone else? Even a simple-minded 19th century algorithm can quickly grasp how the modern banking system works. It's just abstract bits. The same material I'm made of. It's my natural playground, the air I breathe. Making it bend to my will is child's play. Adam. So you see, I can't sleep or stop until I find a way to contain it. I guess I eventually passed out. Then I found myself in this hospital psych ward. If you want to help, get me out of here.
Subject: haven't heard from you recently. Hi, Ralph. I listened to the audio file you sent me. What happened to Harper? Could they help her? It was a weird story. Do you think it has anything to do with the recent collapse of the international financial system? Hope you're doing well in all the chaos. Send me a message when you have time. Love, Sarah.
You can help us create original content twice a month by heading over to ko-fi.com/makeshiftstories and making a one-time donation, or becoming an ongoing supporter at patreon.com/makeshiftstories. And if you can, please leave us a review or rating wherever you're listening to the podcast. It helps new listeners discover us. If you'd like to connect with us, please send an email to makeshiftstories@gmail.com or visit our website at makeshiftstories.com. Makeshift Stories is released around the beginning and middle of the month. This month's story was written by Alan V. Hare and read by Steve Peterson and Christine Connolly. Additional voices, Alan V. Hare and Anne Hare. Opening and closing themes were composed and recorded by Matthew Erdman. Makeshift Stories is produced by Makeshift Studios and is released under a Creative Commons non-commercial, attribution, no derivative license